Welcome to this presentation on child development files, and we're presenting this in the context of carrying out the Rainbow Parent Meetings, which happen a few times a year. I'm Sammy Fugler, delivering this presentation for you. So the first thing that we want to talk about is the EYFS, which is the Early Years Foundation Stage. This is a UK framework, and it's the framework that we use at Rainbow in order to inform our activities, the way that we structure the environment, and most importantly, for the context of this presentation, it's the EYFS that informs how we track and monitor children's development. The EYFS says that children are in fact born ready. They're ready, able and eager to learn. The EYFS says that children actively reach out to other people in the world around them. Development is not something that's an automatic process, however. It depends on each unique child having the opportunities to interact, and that's our responsibility as part of providing a GAN provision to provide those opportunities for interaction, positive relationships with those that are caring for them, with the early years practitioners in the GAN, and enabling environments. And those environments are about how we plan and organise the play spaces with activities and with the resources that we set out in the classrooms and in the garden. The EYFS is based on 4 principles. The first principle is a unique child, and this suggests that every child is unique. No two children are the same. They have their own unique gifts, talents, and sets of challenges. The second principle is about developing positive relationships. That's with parents, with carers, for the children to develop positive relationships with the early years practitioners that are working with them, and to support positive relationships between children. And the third principle is enabling environments, how we build effective learning environments in the way that we lay out the space, organise the toys and resources, provide continuous learning provision in the classrooms, in the garden, and how we develop activities and adult-led and child-initiated opportunities for the children. And what the EYFS says is when you put these 3 things together, the uniqueness of a child, positive relationships and enabling environments, that the fourth principle, which is learning and development, that's when it takes place, when these other 3 things are there and fully realized. This is the planning cycle, planning, observation and assessment cycle. So the child is in the middle, and what we need to do is start with observation. We need to look, listen and note how children are developing, what milestones they've met, and we do that by moving on to assessment. We analyse what we've seen, either what we've seen through ad hoc observations when we just watch the children playing, or when we stand back and do more formal observations. The assessment part of the cycle is where we put those observations into a context and we decide, what do these things that we've seen the children doing, what do they tell us about how the children are developing, who the children are, what their interests are. And we can use the developmental milestones, which are contained within the EYFS, at this assessment stage in order to make sense of what we've observed. And the third pillar of the cycle is planning. So planning next steps, planning targets, planning activities, and planning the environment for children should be informed from the observation and the assessment that we've undertaken. There's 2 types of assessment. The first type of assessment is formative assessment. Formative assessment is assessment that informs us. It does not come from the word formal. It comes from the word to inform. And we formatively assess the children all the time. When we come into the classroom in the morning, we look around and we make a formative assessment of who's tired, who needs to sleep. And the formative assessment is what helps us to plan for the children's next steps, sometimes really next immediate steps. We see the children around the cutting table and we see that a specific child needs more support holding the scissors. So we provide that support or that scaffolding to hold the scissors or do the craft activity. That's called formative assessment. And you can make notes of your formative assessment on post-it notes or things like that, and just put down what you see, or you just hold the formative assessment in your head, talk about it with colleagues and share it. The second type of assessment is summative assessment, and this is where it comes from the word to summarize, and this is a more formal method of assessment. Typically in schools, a summative assessment is an end of topic test, an exam, a bagrut, an A-level, a checklist, something like this, where it's a summary of what's been achieved. Now, of course, this might also inform your next steps, but it's not as dynamic as formative assessment. Formative assessments happens all the time when you're with children. Summative assessment is something that's more planned. So, for example, at Rainbow, what we do, we have the developmental milestone sheets. This is where we record our summative assessment. It's a meaningful thing when we pull out the summative assessment sheets. We do it at a specific time and we look through milestone by milestone and we tick off the milestones that have been met. These are the sheets that we use for the summative assessment. Summative assessment would usually have or always have preset criteria. So a summative assessment is just not making a note or writing down, things that you've seen, but it's making judgments against a set of criteria. Have the children met this, etc., etc. So here you can see an example of the summative assessment sheets that we use. Okay, so coming back, that is all how we use the EYFS, the Early Years Foundation stage, to inform and track children's progress. But now I just want to spend a minute or two talking about what the EYFS actually is. So it's a UK framework and it's split into these 7 areas of learning that you can see down the left hand side of your screen. So the prime areas are personal, social and emotional development, physical development, communication and language, and then the specific areas. And the specific areas don't always apply to babies. The specific areas are as the children start to grow up a little bit. After they're a year old, 18 months old, this is when they should really start to be exploring more the specific areas of learning, and these include literacy, mathematics, knowledge and understanding of the world, and expressive arts and design, or creative development if you like. And then each area of learning, if you look on the right hand side of your screen, you can see a list of aspects. And if we take the first area of learning, for example, personal and social emotional development, you can see that that area of learning is actually broken down into 3 aspects: making relationships, self-confidence and self-awareness, managing feelings and behavior. So those 3 aspects make up that area of learning. And in the area of learning of physical development, for example, we have moving and handling. This is one aspect of physical development, and the second aspect of physical development would be health and self-care. So if you count down on the right hand side of your screen the number of aspects, there are actually 17 aspects that make up the early years foundation stage, and we track children's development across all 17 of those aspects. So The 17 aspects, which come from the 7 areas of learning, are broken down into developmental milestones for each age group. For each aspect, for each age group, there are milestones. And these are the things that the children should meet. The guidance, the EYFS guidance, shows us how we can support the children in meeting these milestones and the way that we can plan and organise the environment to support the children in meeting these milestones. But for the purposes of this presentation, we are focused on what those milestones are and whether the children are meeting those milestones or not. Here is an example of the first area of learning and the first aspect, actually. So it's personal, social and emotional development, and you see at the top it says making relationships, and that is aspect number 1. And then down the left hand side of the screen you can see that we have the different ages, and actually this is only the first page, but if you turn through the book it goes all the way up to 60 months. So in these first 3 age groups you can see that the milestones are there in the very first column, the turquoise column that says a unique child. And all of these things, for example, birth to 11 months, personal, social, emotional development, making relationships, the very first milestone for birth to 11 months is the child enjoys the company of others and seeks contact with others from birth. So that is the very first milestone. So you, if you're working in that age group, would need to make a judgment based on the observations that you've carried out, based on your knowledge of the child. Is that child reaching that milestone? Does the child enjoy the company of others and seeks out contact with other people? If yes, you highlight it to show that it's been met. And then the purple column is what we can do as adults to support them in achieving those milestones. And the green column, enabling environments, is how we can what we can provide in the environment, how we can set up the rooms, what activities we can provide to help them meet those milestones. Okay, so let's come on now to look at the child development files that you are required to keep at Rainbow. There are four child development files for each classroom, one for the red, one for the blue, one for the green, and one for the yellow. And the key worker for each of those is responsible for maintaining the development file for that specific colour group. So within the children's development file, you should see, first of all, the children's How to Care for Me sheets. This is essentially a child's care plan, how we care for that child. They produce the care plan at the initially at the home visit, and the key worker should keep that care plan up to date as the days, weeks, months, even years progress with the child being at the nursery. And the parent meetings are a great time to just revisit that How to Care for Me sheet and update it. The next section of the child development file will be planned observations. You should be doing 2 planned observations with your key children every month, and even cover staff or other people working in the nursery can also contribute to completing the observations, and you store all of those observations in the section for that child in your colour group's child development file. You might also have any ad hoc observations or notes. You will definitely have the developmental milestones. This is the checklist, the summative assessment that we've just talked about. And you will also have a target sheet. Every month you should be setting a target for each of your key children and reviewing the target for the month before, and that stays in their developmental file, and you definitely can discuss those targets with the parents when you are delivering the parent consultation meeting. So here's an example of a blank observation form. As I said, you should be having 2 of those per month. And here's one that's been completed. This is, the child's name here is Susie Sunshine. She's 38 months old. As I said, anyone can carry out the observations. However, they primarily carried out by the key worker. We talked about 2 observations a month. And of course, you can always jump up and take the initiative to observe a child as and when necessary, and when the opportunity presents itself. Try to observe in a range of different contexts, so at the eating table, in the garden, during a structured play activity, during free play, going home time, self-help, toileting. Try to observe in a range of different contexts. Evaluate your observations. Check your observations against the EYFS in order to see where the children are developing, where they might need some additional support, and plan for the children's next steps. Okay, that's observations in a nutshell. Here's another example of the summative assessment records. We've already looked at this one. The milestones should stay for the child as long as they are with us in the GAN. Each time the chart is reviewed, you should add to what was there before, even if it's a different key worker or a different class. When the age group changes, you keep the old one in their file and you add the new one. Each time you complete the summative check, use a different color pen and add a key at the end of the chart to show which color pen refers to which date. Here's an example that I've done. So you see the orange pen there is on the 19th of the 2nd, 2022. That's when those were done. Those kind of red or brown ticks, that was on the 1st of the 5th, 2022. And the pink highlighting was on the 1st of the 12th, 2021. So you can add as many of those different colors at the bottom as you like. And each time you review this, which would usually be 3 times a year, you should use a different color pen and add the key at the bottom. As you prepare for the parent meetings into their developmental file, you should collect a few pieces of the children's work. This is an example of a piece of work that Ori did. This is quite old now. It's on the 12th of the 1st, 2017. So you put the date and you add a description to say what happened and how that piece of work was produced. Ori selected colours independently at the writing table without adult support. She took a piece of paper and began drawing. So you would expect to see around 3 new pieces of annotated work in the child's developmental file before each parent consultation meeting. Okay, you should produce 5 photos on a page with captions. The pictures should show how the children engage at different times of the day. So for example, inside play, outside play, free play time, taking part in an adult initiated activity, meal times, care routines, when they're playing alone, when they're playing with others. So up to 5 photos that include some or all of those things. And of course, different developmental areas. So a photo where they're taking part in physical development, language development, where they're taking part in a maths or reasoning activity, etc. The picture should focus on what the children do, and you should add a caption to the pictures which link what's going on in the pictures to their development, and it should have a date. When you're arranging the pictures, you should use an app, for example, like PhotoPix, or you could do it on Word if you wanted to. And you can do that from your phone and send it to the office printer. Here's 2 examples of photos. So in the first one, you can see here There's a photo of Niv with some plastic tubing, and it says, Niv selected the tubing, took it to the craft table and said telephone line. And here on the right hand side you can see a picture of Colin. Colin played for 20 minutes alone with the cars, organising by colour and crashing them into each other, saying boom. And the final thing that you need to do is your parent preparation meeting, parent meeting preparation sheets. And this is where you just pardon me, this is where you just make a record of all of the things in that parent meeting that you wish to discuss. And these should be kept in the child's development file. So if the child's with us for 3 years and they've had 3 parent meetings a year, you should have 9 of those in their file, and you can actually then look back on those sheets to see what was discussed at previous meetings. Thank you for listening.